Who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
On goes Paul. People might yet win it here for Wolves. Flash in the shot. What a goal! For you in all its magnificence.
Good evening, and welcome to the Wolves Fancast preview show. I'm not getting my words out. It's a great start, but welcome to the Wolves Fancast preview show in association with the Sports Social Podcast Network, FC Quiz.app, and the Boston Coffee and Vending Company. We're here tonight to talk about Liverpool versus Wolves in the league. A difficult challenge, and to join me, I've got some esteemed guests. I've got Josh Lem, 2.0, Cam Smith, and the wonderful Danny Paletti. I'll come to you first, Danny. How is life in America at the moment? It's a crazy world we're living in, but how is supporting Wolves in America right now?
Could you have started with an easier question? I work for a government contractor, so things are great. We're not spending all day in meetings figuring out what the hell we're doing. But yeah, no, in terms of supporting Wolves, it's great. Every time I go out to watch a game, there's a new person showing up.
Oh, that's brilliant. Is it you finding that as we go through and we grow as a club and our international exposure is growing, that you're getting more and more people who are interested in Wolves in America, but not only that, in Baltimore as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, glory hunting even on the smallest levels. After a couple of wins, I'll get, as the chairman of Baltimore Wolves, I'll get the automated email that someone's joined on the Worldwide Wolves website. So, every little bit helps.
That's brilliant. And welcome to you as well, Cam. It's your first time on the show, I believe.
Second, but it was a good few years ago. I think Lopetegui was in charge last time I was on. Yeah, so a good couple of years ago. Yeah.
So how are you finding Wolves under Fosun this season and the Gary O'Neill, that whole situation, and where we find ourselves now with Vitor Pereira? How are you finding that whole journey so far?
I mean, since Pereira's taken over, the two games that I haven't been to are actually the two games that we've won at home against Villa and United. So pretty much a curse, I think, this season. I've seen us sin once, obviously under Gary O'Neill against Southampton. But I'm liking what I've seen the last few weeks. I think against Villa, we were fantastic. Against Blackburn, I think we saw with Liverpool and Plymouth, you can never take those results against lower league sides for granted. And I think the second half performance was controlled. And obviously, we're going there this weekend and not expecting to get something. But I feel that that sort of good vibe that we can get something is back, I must admit.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think we've seen that little upturn in results and performances. It's all sort of coming together. Welcome to the show as well, John Cooper. Nice to have you with us tonight. How are your feelings about the recent games and where Vitor Pereira is taking the club with the signings coming out of this January transfer window?
Yeah, I mean, a vast improvement. I obviously, like all of us, probably most of us season ticket holders see the home games. And I've seen a few away games as well. I'm still recovering from being at Everton. So I'm in counselling after that one. And so compared to some of the stuff we were seeing earlier on in the season, I'm impressed with what it's doing. I think the key to it is that the players now look as if they know what they're doing. They now look as if they've been given a role. They understand the role they're supposed to play, and they execute it. Under Gary O'Neill, and I wasn't a knocker, because he did a lot for us, and let's never forget he saved us last season. But I just got the impression towards the end of his tenure, the players didn't quite know what their roles were. At times, that there were changes of strategy, again, which confused the situation. Pereira now looks like as if he's given the players a clear identity and keeps playing to his blueprint, and the players look comfortable in doing that. So, like everyone else, I think I'm optimistic, and I'm quite optimistic for Saturday as well. I noticed David Moyes found a way to reduce Liverpool to the long ball. Now, if Pierre perhaps, as I know he will, maybe looks at how Everton played Liverpool in midweek, and with Liverpool perhaps on the edge of a blip that all teams have, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get something out of the game on Sunday, I think it is.
Yeah, I'm hopeful going into the game, and I think looking at what you said there about getting certain idea of roles and understanding of what you need to do as a player within that. The teams that have played the last couple of games, Aston Villa and Blackburn, there has been a sense of similarity and similar players have been involved. Do we feel like that's going to continue going into the Liverpool game? And do we feel like there might be a couple of changes potentially to that starting 11?
Well, I mean, I'll kick it off. I think Pierre will stick to what he knows. But I'm just looking at that starting 11. Yeah, I mean, I think Andre might be in due course struggling to justify his place, particularly with Marshall. Is it Marshall Matabi? You know what I'm talking about, the new signing that we've got, who I was very impressed with at Blackburn. But yeah, I think my view, I think we'll stick to what we know now, maybe tighten it up at the back a bit. I think we've seen the last of Santiago Bueno. I just don't think is of the caliber that we really need at this particular stage of the season. That's no disrespect to him, but he was in trouble at Blackburn, and he's constantly, from my observations, been in trouble during most games. So I think we've seen the back of him, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, or just in a tactical way. But I think he'll stick to his guns, Pierre. He strikes me as being that sort of manager.
Yeah, and I'll come to you, Josh. The man who's sort of thrived under Pereira since the January transfer window, and in the last couple of games, is massively, is Jean-Ric Bellegarde, and he's found this sort of role now. But as we say, we've got Andre, we've got João Gomez, we've got Bellegarde. How does he shoehorn these players into that starting 11, Josh?
Bit of a stereotypical thing to say, but it's a wonderful problem to have in it. I think,
of course,
obviously during January, everyone's like quite upset that we aren't getting bodies in. But I think now we're at the point, the window's closed, we've got the players in, the squad just looks so much healthier. And I think it gives you so much different options and the things you could do. We're not going to be haunted by one or two injuries anymore, I don't think. As the centre-back, Nasser Giga, I think if he was going to play any part in the game on Sunday, or even a large part for the rest of the season, I think he would have played some sort of part against Blackburn. I think when Bueno come off, that would have been the perfect time for Giga to come in, but that didn't happen. So potentially that's more of like one for the future. Manetzi came on, looked like a goal threat, like consistently. He would definitely get goals. And maybe that eases the concerns about not having Larson for the next game or two. But yeah, the squad just looks a lot healthier, really. And similar to what Cam said as well, I'm going into games against big teams now, and I'm not constantly thinking we're going to get pumped here. I'm going in with hope and belief that we can actually win games or get points where we need to.
Yeah, I think there is a sense of belief that's growing within the club, and you can see that in the confidence in the roles that they're being put into, and certainly having players who now are playing in set positions that they are comfortable with. And I think the biggest concern going into this game, Danny, is we've got Hwang out, who's going to be out for 2 or 3 games. We've got Jürgen Strand-Larsen, who's going to be missing for a few more games. We are looking a little bit light up front, and there's a lot of work for Cunha to be done. So do you think he goes with Cunha, Guedes, Sarabia, or do you think there might be a bit of a wild card in there?
Yeah, I think like Josh was alluding to, I think Vitor's probably a bit on the conservative side in terms of changing things around. So I think I would probably err towards the side of guessing that Sarabia stays. But I think the one wrench in that is, how do you keep Bellegarde in if you're going to play Andre and João Gomez? I think that there's players like Bellegarde and even Munetzi who, sort of warrant a place over the last couple games, and Sarabia might be the one to drop out of that. So I don't know. It's the biggest question going into the weekend. I err on the side of Sarabia keeping his place, but I think you could make a case for either one of Bellegarde or Munetsi potentially starting in front of him.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that he might go with that. The only other situation where we might find ourselves, Cam, is where Vitor Pereira in the January transfer window, he was talking about having this athletic midfielder, being able to play in a midfield three. And now Marshall Monetsi's come in. He's had that time against Blackburn. We've also got Jean-Ric Bellegarde, who's came in and showed that he can play in a central position. Is there a chance that he goes to a slightly different system and plays a front two against Liverpool just to be a little bit more conservative in that midfield area?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this today, but I just think if we're going to play a sort of midfield three, that means we're going to be left with two up front. And I think without Larson in particular, when you haven't got a more physical body up there, that would be a huge problem for us on the break, I'd believe. But in terms of Bellegarde, I just think I hate the idea of changing a winning team, and I think you have to pick your players in form. And too many times we've saw Bellegarde shifted into a more forward position, and quite frankly, he's been dismal out of position essentially. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see him perform the way he did against Villa because of the fact that playing him in a more natural position. And I don't think we should be trying to shoehorn players in, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it is a difficult situation, and I think from the YouTube comments that I've seen, it makes sense. And I think Maximus Wright put it really well here, that I can see us shifting into that depending on the scoreline. And I think you've got it bang on there, Max, to be honest. I think if we're winning that game or it's a very tight game, we can change the formation, make it a little bit more structurally sound, a bit more rigid, and try and block out the game. Before I talk about a situation with the registered squad and the players who have been unregistered, I want to come to you, Danny, about obviously you were in America, and obviously we also had a tour there for the pre-season. I was lucky enough myself to be in Florida, but I didn't make the trip up to Maryland. Could you tell a little bit about the experience that you had with that and how that went down and the sort of things that you had happen for you at the club?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, obviously it was a great opportunity. Wolves hadn't been to America in something like 40 years or something. And I think it's just become such a normal part of the global game now that you see Premier League teams traveling all over, and there's both good and bad that comes with that. But there's a huge growing fan base in the US, and with the World Cup obviously coming up, I think it would be silly not to take advantage of that on some level. So, I mean, first of all, it was a really gratifying and fun experience seeing so many people come out of the woodwork. As a person who spends too much time online, it's really easy to think that the people that you interact with immediately are the entire fan base. But as soon as something like this happens, everybody who's not really part of Wolves Twitter or Wolves Facebook or whatever, they find their way to you. Especially if you have the official Baltimore Wolves email address. And so that was really fun. Just more people than I ever could have thought nearby coming out of the woodwork to come experience it. And I think that the club, did a decent job showing up for them. That said, we're a lot of months on now, and I think that it's worth saying that the club could do better. And a lot of that I chalk up to them not having been here in 40 years. I think that there's a lot to learn that they could have done better just in terms of engagement, picking locations, things that fans will actually grab onto. I mean, really simple stuff. Even if it's just a place to meet up. Some of our more popular events were literally just, meeting people from all over our huge country, at a fairly casual event. Nothing that required, players to show up or, people whose time is super valuable. And I think those things could go a long way, especially if they're thinking about capitalizing further before the World Cup. Like I said, I think, it's a massive opportunity. I'm easily the first to criticize Jeff Shee's constant obsession with maximizing exposure and revenue. But I just think that there has to be a balance that's struck there in terms of the exposure coming up to the World Cup. Like I said, because there's only so many teams that are instantly recognizable across world football, and the way that football fandom is growing in the US, those teams are going to get a slice of the pie during that time, and Wolves are going to want to be as big a part of that as they can.
Most definitely, and I'm glad you got to experience that, and I hope they do it again in a much better way. And I echo what you say about having the events set up a little bit more cohesively beforehand, because as I found, it was a little bit rushed. Things felt a little bit lastminute.com, but it was a wonderful experience, and especially to see Wolves in the USA was really good. And I'm glad that they were able to do it for a lot of you guys who may not have the opportunity to come over to the UK and see the Wolves as much as you'd like. Heading back to the Liverpool game, I want to talk a little bit about the squad list that's come out, and I'll come to you first, John, on it, because Craig Dawson obviously wasn't registered within the squad.
Yeah.
Now he's not been registered. If he's released by Wolves, he can't sign for another Premier League club until the summer. Do you think that this is the club potentially protecting themselves by not letting Dawson go to a club like Leicester, where he may have a positive impact? Or do you think this is just potentially an oversight and something that the club have said, okay, we don't need him within the squad, we don't need to worry about it?
I certainly don't think it's an oversight. It's not the sort of thing you'd expect professional people to miss. And when one looks back at the background to the Cody Dawson the transfer or swap, which never happened, it's clear to me that Leicester also were of the view that whatever happened, Cody wasn't going to come to us, because he would have been, they viewed, and I view as well, a positive influence in the dressing room, whether or not he played. And so I'm pretty sure Leicester, perfectly properly, it's all fair in love and war in professional sport, perfectly properly Leicester weren't going to let that happen. And I think in a different way, but in a similar way, I think we've taken the same step, because it would have looked, if Dawson hadn't been given free rein, he probably would have gone to Leicester. And these things are fine margins. And I don't think we can take chances like this. But can I just mention one name just briefly that we didn't mention in the last debate, which really, for me, I'd like to mention? That's Rodrigo Gomez.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, a space and a place should be found for him. It's another debate we could have where he fits in. But I just want to say a big shout out for him. I think he's been tremendous when he's appeared. And we should be trying to find an outlet for him. So I'll just put that as a postscript to that answer, if you forgive me.
No problem at all. I mean, Rodrigo Gomez is somebody who's loved on this channel, and somebody who I think is going to be fantastic for Wolves in the future and plays a big part. Just coming back to the squad list, Josh. The situation, obviously, Sasha and Yerson, we understand. A similar sort of question to you about what's your thoughts about the Craig Dawson situation and how the way the club have handled it?
From a human standpoint, I don't think it's very fair on him at all. I think as the fans, we love him. And for him to be treated like this, I don't think is fair at all, especially when he's never done anything wrong at all. I think, especially in like the last 4 or 5 months or something, we've had so many like controversies with players doing stupid things, saying stupid things. And he's in his time here, he's never done anything like that. He's always been, to use a football manager term, a model professional. So I think from that standpoint, it's very unfair on him. But like John said, if he goes to Leicester, small margins, he could help them gain an extra point. He could head the ball away when in another situation, there's another defender there who doesn't, and it goes in the net. And that 1 point could help Leicester finish above us. So from a business point of view, I suppose it's understandable.
I totally agree with you. And I think it shows a sense of understanding from the club that they're not lost in that we can't be giving away, because in previous years with previous people in certain positions, they may have made that mistake, and we may have been looking at a situation where we wanted Cody but we couldn't get him, and Dawson has walked into on a free contract to Leicester, and he does make a big difference even at his age. Having somebody with that experience, we saw that when we signed him in the January transfer window, and the difference that he made was monumental, and it really helped set us up
and we don't
for having that strong season.
Or do we as a club of all players coming back and not scoring against us? So I could see, just as Dawson could well clear the ball off the line, rightly good comment, he could equally come up at a corner and score a goal against us. And unfortunately, fate dictates that a lot of our ex-players do that.
Yeah, and let's not forget that he scored against Liverpool. It was in a fantastic game at Molineux. In I think it was his debut match, if I remember correctly. So he has a little bit of history in this fixture as well, if not been the return leg. I'll come to you, Cam, on the squad list and the situation that the players have been registered. The one man on there, obviously, he's been involved in a couple of games as a sub, and that is Carlos Forbes. Do we feel like he has a future at the club? Because going off what happened in the January transfer window, they were looking at maybe bringing somebody else in and sending him back to Ajax. Do we feel like he has zero chance moving forward, or is he still got a time to prove himself and maybe even stay at Wolves long term?
I mean, personally, I don't think so. In terms of the future, he's not made an impact worth noting really in any of the games that he's played. I think there's probably one situation off the top of my head that he's really caused danger, and that was against Liverpool. Ironically, Sunday's opponents, but I just think he looks like Bambi on ice in the final third, to be honest. And he has pace, but it's not that sort of raw pace and power that we saw Adama Traore have, where it used to frighten the life out of defenders. It's just a genuine combination of speed and no end products. And yeah, I find it harsh, but as I say, I think he looks like Bambi on ice at times.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the raw level and nature of his ability and performances on the pitch is exactly that. And it doesn't show an upgrade on what we lost. And I think especially you see when Neto leaves the club and he's touted as this sort of like potential long-term replacement. We haven't seen that quality from him, have we, that we saw when Neto first came in?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, exactly. I think Neto's probably the best example of it. That obviously he was a young kid when he first arrived from Lazio, but you saw from minute one that there was something there, like we saw with Rodrigo Gomez now, that bit of bite, that bit of just aggression to his game. Whereas I don't think anyone's seen that with Forbes, to be honest. And I wasn't keen on the signing before he arrived, to be honest, from the bits I've seen of him at Ajax. It did baffle me all round, to be honest. And the fact there was even a 10 million, was it 10 million pounds? Was it the clause to buy him?
Yeah.
Something like that. The fact that was even there in the first place, I think, yeah, a baffling signing, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the bookmarks of the Gary O'Neill tenure and being the players that he's brought in haven't really stepped up to the mark, in all honesty, and
yeah,
it is one of his failings. I'll come to you sort of on a last mark on there, Danny, with the squad list. I mean, looking at it, as we said, we feel a little bit more confident now with the squad and the way that we're moving forward. Do you think there's any sort of areas on the pitch where we are still a little bit weak? Or do you think that now, after the signings of Munetsi and De Giga and Agbadou in January, that we're now in a position where we're a lot stronger and can move forward?
I think in terms of raw numbers, we're probably all right. But I think just like a couple other people have mentioned, I still think up top, in terms of the types of options that Vitor Pereira seems to prefer, I think it's hard to find replacements that still keep the same shape when Larson is out. If God forbid Cunha goes out with an injury, these kinds of things, it's harder to replace those players with what we have. I think just like Cam was talking about, Forbes is a great example of this. I don't even know that he necessarily fit what Gary O'Neill was trying to do. It felt like a very opportunistic signing, but he certainly doesn't really seem to fit what Vitor Pereira is trying to do. And so I think in those sort of areas up top, especially wide, I don't know that we necessarily have the kind of replacements that Pereira would prefer, should injuries or suspensions happen.
Yeah, and I think that we're starting to get an idea now, aren't we, that with the type of striker and profile that what Vitor Pereira has wanted in the last couple of games isn't necessarily a traditional number 9, and it's this sort of like half number 10, half number 9, somebody who can do several roles. Do you feel like with that, the pressure being on Jurgen Strand Larsen now, he's got to perform when he comes back from injury, lest he could be on the chopping block in the summer? And then we're at a position where we need to bring in maybe a couple of strikers going into the summer if we're still in the Premier League.
Oh, it could be. I guess my own preference is that there's a better balance being struck than in the last few years of catering to a manager's particular style and also building a squad that's robust regardless. I'd be very disappointed to see someone like Larson go, just because having him, even if Vitor Pereira isn't particularly used to playing with his type of player. I don't even know if that's true, but the point is that having a player, of that more traditional number 9 mold, is going to serve us well if Vitor Pereira doesn't stick around, which history suggests that he might not. And so I think in the past we've been guilty of, jumping around too much between different transfer policies, end up with, Lopetegui signings, and that was a bit understandable because of the situation we were in that January. And then you end up with a completely different regime coming in that summer with Lopetegui sort of edging towards the door, and it just all becomes kind of a mess. And that's where you end up sort of the way we were this January, trying to sort out a squad that had, as we could see, plenty of talent, but not really a coherent idea behind it.
I think there's a debate to be had about the goalkeepers as well. Not so much in their ability as shot stoppers, but in their ability to play from the back with their feet, as it were. And again, no disrespect to the present players we've got, and particularly Jose Sá, I think has been a massive improvement over the last few games in terms of his overall performance levels. But I wonder whether there's a debate to be had whether we need a goalkeeper who can play from the back and can play with his feet in more than a way than we have with our present 2 incumbents. I'd be interested to know what everyone thinks about them.
I have always been of the belief that a goalkeeper's primary job, and I'm sure everyone thinks this as well, is just stop the ball going in the net as much as possible. And if you can play with your feet, that's a bonus. And I think there's very few keepers in the world who can do both very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by the time it gets to the summer, I think we might have bigger problems than replacing. So, and I think for another year, I think you could do worse than keeping him. But I also think with the Larson situation, I also think you can liken that a bit to Tommy Doyle in the sense that he might not be a Vitor Pereira player, he might not fancy him that much, and he might get moved on. And then in 6 months or a year's time, Vitor Pereira is gone, and a manager comes in who Tommy Doyle would have suited perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is that we don't know the longevity of Vitor Pereira, and we don't know where we are. But looking at the situation we find ourselves in with this way he's set up the squad, he's brought in a lot of older players, and he's tried to balance out that youth with players who are sort of at their prime or just approaching it. And I think having that sort of mix now, and that it's a healthy mix of where we are, is much better for the long-term protection of the club and protection of staying in this league potentially, but also going 3-4 years into the future. And I think players that you mentioned, John, like Rodrigo Gomez, Pedro Lima, they really, really help with this because they are fantastic talents. A fantastic comment from David Hopper. I think Kelleher is probably the perfect goalkeeper for exactly what we just talked about. But the problem with that is it's too much money. way too much money. I think that we'd be wasting most of our transfer budget on Kelleher, and I don't think that's our problem going into the summer. Obviously, the opponents on Sunday are going to be a Liverpool Cam. There's not much noise coming out of them after the last couple of games. We know Gakpo could potentially be out, so we may be facing Luis Diaz instead. And we have no idea about Arnie Slot and whether he's going to be in the dugout. How do we feel about the potential of facing Luis Diaz versus Cody Gakpo, and what those sort of challenges, how are they different?
I mean, first of all, just if we do get something, don't celebrate too much because of the celebration police Liverpool fans the last few days, as we've seen. But to be honest, I'd rather face Diaz than Gakpo, purely based on Gakpo's recent form. I've been reading some Liverpool fans on Twitter the last few days who are very much in the camp of sending some hate towards Luis Diaz at the minute, because I know he's apparently been very poor since Christmas. I haven't caught much of them recently. I was watching the Champions League when they played Everton the other day. But I think it's a good time to play them. After the other day, of course, they'll be going into revenge. But like John said, maybe they're in somewhat of a little blip because every team has them, even title challengers. But Anfield is still the most difficult place to go to in the league. You can never expect to pick up anything there, never mind 3 points. But as Josh said again earlier, in terms of the fact that we want to be going into these games again thinking that we can get something, and not just we're gonna roll over and let them tickle our bellies again. So I'm quietly confident that we could go and maybe rustle a few feathers and pick up a point. But I don't think we should expect that, purely because of Anfield being the tough place it is to go.
Yeah, I think it will be a difficult test, and I think this will test the resolve of the players that's been built up the last couple of games. The one player who, and again, John, you mentioned it earlier, people coming back and scoring against their old clubs, is obviously the ex-winger Diogo Jota. He's a tremendous threat, a wonderful player, and everyone who watched him at Wolves really, really loved him and thought he was a tremendous player. But he is a real handful. It's somebody we've got to worry about yet again at the weekend, even with his recent form not being that fantastic.
Oh, God, yes. I mean, I look back on those games we had with him when he was in our team a few years back. It's not that long ago, and it was a joy to watch him. A joy to watch many of the players that were playing around about that time, not too long ago. But he will be a threat. But we're talking here about Liverpool, aren't we? We're talking about players like Salah and others who, if Jota is having an off day, there are plenty of others that could be having an on day. So, yeah, but I think we've got to have a game plan. We've got to have a strategy. And I'm confident the present manager will have it. But we take our eye off Jota for 1 minute and we will have problems. Although I really did enjoy watching the Plymouth game at the weekend. And, Plymouth can do it, so can we. Now, I realised that it was a different sort of Liverpool team, but Jota was playing. And Plymouth had a strategy for him. And one hopes again that our team have a similar strategy and can learn from the past 2 games, particularly as far as Liverpool are concerned, noting as I do, there was a totally different team against Plymouth. But nonetheless, I think looking at the way Plymouth played a different Liverpool team and the way Everton played Liverpool in the last game, there are a lot of lessons to be learned there about coping with Liverpool, which again give me a cause for reasonable, quiet optimism for Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. Danny P, what a great comment. Jota is always injured, 75% he's 75% injured these days. What a comment, Danny P. Thanks for watching along. Oh wait, there's a bit of behind the curtains, bit of breaking the fourth wall.
Can't fully leave the chat. That's where I live.
I'll come to you, Josh, on sort of Liverpool. Is there a feeling that Arnie Slot might give a little bit of respect to Wolves and sort of match our formation? Because they do have the strength to do that. They have Virgil van Dijk, Konate, and Kwanzaa. So do you feel like they might match us up and go 3 at the back? Or do you think they'll stick to their guns and stay with their 4-2-3-1?
To be completely honest, until you said it I hadn't even considered the possibility that they could go to a 3 at the back. I think Van Dijk and Konate as a back two, I think is incredible. Probably second in the league to only Gabriel and Saliba. Kwanzaa, I don't think he's been very good this season. I've got quite a few mates who support Liverpool. They've not really been impressed with him this season. But yeah, they've got depth all over the park, and it's not depth for the sake of it. It's quality as well. They've got players in literally every single position who can help them win a game, whether it's through the energy levels or actually scoring goals. Yeah, the only thing I would say, which is again hopeful for us, is that Liverpool fans that I've spoke to have said they seem to struggle when the game becomes a bit of a dogfight, and when it's lovely football and they're in complete control, they're just going to walk all over you. But like against Plymouth, they made it very ugly. Everton are obviously always going to make it ugly for Liverpool. And I just think if you can get João Gomez specifically and maybe Semedo, just put a few nasty tackles in, make the game a bit stop-start, make it a bit of a fight, I think it just improves your chances so much more.
But don't get sent off.
Yeah.
Of course. It's good that you talk about that level of physicality, because one player who we've seen do that in the last couple of games and seemed to be more physical, Danny, is Jean-Rick Bellegarde. And he's somebody who, when he's involved in the game 100% of the time, he seems to be more committed to making challenges and wanting to get quick turnovers in the centre of the park. And do you think that's more of a reason that he's going to be involved on Sunday and having this dogged nature about his gameplay at the moment?
Beyond being able to make predictions, especially about Jean-Rick Bellegarde starting or not. But I certainly hope you're right. He's been so much better starting games than he has been coming on in the middle of them. And it's the biggest question I don't have an answer for is how does that midfield look? Because I wish that you could have both Andre and João Gomez and Jean-Rick Bellegarde for all that they've done over the past couple of games. I don't know that Vitor Pereira's system really supports that. But I totally agree with you that Bellegarde has just been so good from the start. I mean, that the Villa game was such a almost breakout performance, if you can call it that, so shortly afterwards, but just the physicality that he brought to that. And I think that, like the others have said, that could be such a huge asset in this game in particular, making things difficult, especially in the middle of the pitch, making things a bit ugly. I don't know about the prediction. I have no idea whether he'll start or not, but that element we need to have. You're on mute, Jeffo.
Currently encountering technical difficulties.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
For some reason, my microphone changed in the settings. I don't know why.
There we go.
Yeah, I will come to you at the end, as I was saying, when I was muted, not on the right thing, for a score prediction at the end. So I'm expecting some good things there, Danny. Obviously, another stat weekend, Cam. I'll bring up a graphic for those watching on YouTube. There's some really, really big games. One quite big one currently going on. I think Matoma has scored for Brighton against Chelsea.
Yeah, it's 2-0 now.
2-0. So that's a hell of a result going on right now. Looking at games on Saturday and Sunday, is there any sort of matches that you're looking forward to? Do you think they're going to be sort of crucial to what we do in terms of survival? And do you hate yourself for wanting Villa to beat Ipswich?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we never want to see the Villa win, do we? But I think they're a stratosphere ahead of us now. I think that sort of rivalry aspect of us and them, it only really comes about around match day, doesn't it, to be honest? So it's never that big of a deal seeing them win. But yeah, we need them to beat Ipswich, and I think Arsenal will turn Leicester over. I think that one's a given. And yeah, obviously it's just those two that we're looking at, really. And then if we were to get something on Sunday, that would be a huge weekend for us. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, I think so. And looking at the teams around us, they either seem to be playing each other or they have really difficult games at the moment. I think after the Liverpool game, we are going into a sort of quote unquote easier run, and hopefully we can carry some of that momentum and not lose a lot of it on Sunday. Looking at the fixtures on there, John, I mean, there's some really, really good ones. There's a couple of London derbies in there as well.
Yeah.
Which because let's not forget Tottenham Man United on Sunday, also a London derby. Which game are you most forward to looking?
Well,
I'll get my word out.
I'll get you. I mean, in terms of entertainment, I think Fulham and Nottingham Forest could be a very entertaining game. Both teams tend to play and can play attractive football. And that's a game, I think, that would be worth watching as far as the neutral's concerned. I think we should also keep our eye on Southampton Bournemouth. I know Southampton are virtually out of it by now, but I'm also... it's early, and you'll know to deal with it in another broadcast. But I keep watching ball because I wouldn't mind a good cup run in due course. So it'd be and plus the fact we're playing them back to back very soon as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they're doing at the moment as well. But no, I think Fulham for me, as someone like all of us that likes a good game of football as a neutral with lots of goals in it, I could have egg all over my face on this one now. I think Fulham Nottingham Forest could be a good game.
Yeah, and we hope that Raul Jimenez continues his good form and improved form this season against Forest and damages their top four push, and that City gets a little bit closer to getting back ahead of Forest.
Yeah.
Looking at the games there, Danny, as an American, which would be the biggest game for an American to watch going into the weekend? Who's got the biggest following on there in terms of American fans?
If you're asking me if I'm waking up at 7:30 a.m. to watch Leicester Arsenal, the answer is no. Probably not. No, I mean, I don't know. Obviously the marquee games on Sunday, I think, were chosen for a reason. I think, especially in the U.S. I mean, you can't kind of look past Spurs and Man United this weekend in terms of an American following. I do know one Baltimore Wolves fan who is being brave and going to the Liverpool bar with his Liverpool supporting friend on Sunday morning. So we'll see how that turns out. I was there once during a game. It was the match under Nuno where Neto scored what should have been his debut goal, and then it was taken away for Johnny's pixel being offside or whatever. But they were very accommodating to me, probably because they still won that game and felt bad that we'd got such a bad decision. But hopefully he has a more difficult time than me, and Wolves pull off something special, and he has to slink out the back. But yeah, I think that Spurs Manchester United match in terms of American following, just my little bit of reporting on the ground is that the Korean gentleman that owns the sandwich shop near where I work, he hopes that they lose so that Ange gets fired. That's the mood over here.
He's not related to the Korean guy, is he?
Not that I know of. He was really excited when Hee-chan was over here, though. They did a little bit with the Korean community in Maryland, which was really special. But yeah, no, the mood in that sandwich shop is very much Ange out.
I think that movement is definitely taking up a lot of speed at the moment, and I hope he turns it around for his sake, because I have a lot of respect for Postecoglou and what he's done in terms of outside of Tottenham, and I think he's a very good manager, and I hope he turns it around because it's nice having somebody who's so straight talking in the Premier League. It's like having an Australian Mick McCarthy doing a press conference every week. It's absolutely fantastic. Little Dan, as always, has put in some odds, and I always caveat this section by saying that if you are betting, when the fun stops, stop, as the saying goes, and as that is. But as always, there are a few bets on there, and I'll come to you first, Josh. As you know, I always like to ask, is there anything that you fancy off the board, or is there anything that you personally would be putting a bet on?
I think Cunha 2+ shots on target and Gravenberch to be carded at 22-1. I think that's really good odds, to be honest. Just having a scan through a few of the other ones here. There's a few not bad. The Konate to score with a header, him or Van Dijk to score with a header. I suppose it's 50-50. You just go with the odds, really. Yeah, I think there's some quite decent value in there, to be fair. If I had to pick one, it'd be the Cunha 2 shots on target and Gravenberch to be carded.
Yeah, that's definitely. What about you, Cam? Is there a bet that on there that you're interested in, or is there something that you know is a certain for you going into the weekend?
I think just agreeing with Josh with the Cunha and Gravenberch one. I mean, my betting look personally is dismal. It's the old. I think there was a tweet about somebody saying they could bet on Shearer to be bald and he'd come out with a mullet or something. That's me when it comes to betting. But yeah, I think definitely the Cunha 2 shots on target and Gravenberch to be carded. Especially, I think if we're going to be playing on the break, Gravenberch is likely going to be the player that's sort of in the thick of it in terms of stopping that. So I can see that happening.
And I'll come to you on that one as well, John. Is there anything on the board that you like the look of, or is there a bet that you put on personally that you think is going to come in at the weekend?
Oh, well, I wish I could be original, following the other two guys, but the wise words, as it were, the Cunha and Gravenberch bet seems to be should be odds on for me, quite honestly. That's a very, very fair opportunity, but no one should listen to me because my betting history is appalling. In fact, my history of winning any game of chance is appalling. I think the only thing I've ever won is a bottle of women's hair shampoo and a raffle. And that's about it. So, guys, anyone listening to this, please don't take my advice on these issues.
I'll come to you finally on it, Danny. I know these odds may look a little bit strange because we do it a different way to you guys, but is there anything that you'd be putting on it, or are you going to echo what the guys are saying with the Cunha Gravenberch 22-1?
That's okay. I'm not a betting man anyway, but I do think that the first one up there in the top left, Cunha and Salah to score, Gomez and McAllister to be carded, and then the only question is, are you going to get the necessary corners in each half to fulfill that one? But the other two, I think, are pretty likely. I think even if Wolves lose, and even if it's heavily in Liverpool's favor, I think Cunha to score is not the most insane call. And then you're just looking for those corners. So yeah, I think that's not bad either.
Yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot of value in there, and as all of you said about the Cunha and Gravenberch one, I think that's a very, very high odds and stands a good chance of coming through. Sort of wrapping it up now. Just give you a round robin. Start with you, Josh. Sort of, what's your feeling on what the score might be, and if you want scorers as well?
I really don't know, to be quite honest with you. Which is probably a bit of a disappointing answer, to be honest. I'd never like to publicly say that I think we're going to lose, so I'm not going to say it. Although in my mind, I might have 2-1 Liverpool. To the public, I'm going to say 2-2.
How about you, Cam? Where are you leaning? And have you got any goal scorers that you want to throw into the mix?
I'm just going to go positive and say we'll do them on the break and win 2-1. And Cunha, for all of the betting advice we've just given, I think Cunha to have 2 shots on target and to score as well, which would be nice. Cunha and Guedes, because I think I've just seen in the comments somebody said Guedes is due a goal. So yeah, I'm going to agree with that. 2-1 to Wolves.
Yeah, I think, Mac's right. Yeah, Guedes is due. I think he's in recent games has done really well, and you can see that potential goal coming sooner rather than later. How about you, John? What was your score prediction for the weekend?
Yeah, I've long thought it'll be 1-1, and I think Guedes will score as well. Look, we've got a decent history at Anfield. I look back on a number of games, including back with the Wyman winner when we were playing them in the Cup. And we could go back even then, as I always say on these events when I'm talking to you, I'd probably go back to games before you guys were born. But Was it Mardenborough who scored the winner many years ago in a game there? So I've lost you all now with the old games. Hopefully there's some people listening that remember some of the vintage games back in the 80s. But I do think we have a decent record, certainly of chances at Anfield. I recall, was it Totti that should have had the winner in the FA Cup, for instance? So I think we're going to create chances, and I'm quite confident we got the ability now to put at least one of them away. So I'm going for 1-1.
And before I come to you, Danny, there's a very good prediction here from Andy Peace. And if we keep a clean sheet at Anfield, I will lose my mind. And especially if Agbadou is the one who scores the winner. If you get that right, Andy Peace, that is a legendary call. I love that. But yeah, finally, Danny, I'll come to you. What is your prediction going into the weekend?
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying that on our own podcast, Whole Lot of Wolves podcast, the first US-based Wolves podcast, we've already done our predictions. So I'm going to have to stick with that one. And in our prediction league, I am well and truly on top, many points clear. So I'm playing a very rotated squad, you might say, going extremely optimistic. And I said 2-1 Wolves win. So I'm going to go with that. And yeah, man, everybody's brought up a lot of good points about injustices in the past, Toti and Neto, but I'm going to say that Rodrigo Gomez grabs the winner. Vengeance for Neto's VAR call.
That would be absolute cinema.
Just imagine that in front of the away end. Oh God!
As long as he does the flappy arm celebration like Neto did.
Imagine it'd be iconic. I hope somebody gets that exact message to Rodrigo, and if he does that would be absolute iconic.
But hey, an own goal it's certainly.
If we come away with 3 points, I'll be happy, independent of the score. It's a difficult game, and I'll probably end it by saying that would be the first sort of win since, I think it's the first win we'd have in the league since Stephen Ward scored the 1-0 winner back in 2010, as far back as that.
I think it was 10.
Yeah, but I appreciate.
None of you remember Steve Mardenborough, do you?
No.
I'm sure people listening to this, but at least one person will be with me on that from the early 80s.
There always is. There always is.
We were relegated that season as well, so happy days, eh?
Iconic moments in Wolves history, and it's got us to this moment. But I appreciate you all for joining me to talk about the game at the weekend, and I appreciate all the comments. I try to get as much of you involved as I can, but as always, it's very difficult when we've got so many fantastic guests on here to talk about the game. But yeah, I appreciate you all guys coming on. As always, talk about wolvesfancast.gmail.com. If you check it out, there is new designs on there that's been put on by Little Dan. The Colonel Agro one is very, very good, and it's got some of the older favourites as well in John DeWolf and Ludwig Polle, some fantastic players. But yeah, make sure you follow us all on the socials. If you haven't already, go and check out a very, very amazing other podcast in Whole Lot of Wolves, where Danny is part of. It is a very, very, very good podcast as well. And as Americans, they know a hell of a lot about soccer. I will say that you're always very, very interesting points and good debates, mate. So I appreciate listening to you, and I hope everyone goes and checks them out. But yeah, till next time, Wolves fans, and we'll catch you then. Thanks again.